it'll come up right in a moment, as you'll see. So go live, and then I'm going to go back to Zoom once we do. Hold on. There we are. Okay, now here we go. All right,
well done,
everybody.
Well done, George.
Here we are.
You're good at that.
Well,
You're very good at that.
Had a little bit of practice. So this is my good friend, Julian Powe. All right, and it's wonderful to be here. And I don't know, there's a lot to say about this guy, but I probably could take up the whole time just talking about him.
Just don't.
But it's really important you know some things. We've been good friends for a number of years now. We've led workshops together, workshops on listening skills, on empathy, on in the financial planning world, but also workshops now on democracy, on participative democracy. And Julian's one of the most engaging and bright, real thinkers about civilization. I just love having conversations with him. We always go quite deep in what we do. He's got a particular fascination with and real interest in conversation. And I hope you'll see that. I know pretty much everybody that meets him recognizes that. Conversation of many different kinds. So of course, this is a whole new conversation to Julian, perhaps, which is a conversation on Facebook Live. And I think the other thing to note is that he's led a tremendously successful golden civilization conversation, which is what, of course, we're now engaged in bringing more and more to the world, all across the world. His is in the outskirts of London, on a hill that William Blake made famous by spotting the spiritual sun on that hill. So, and Julie and I have gone up there and attempted a golden conversation up there, which was very cool, along with the chair of the Blake Society, Tim Heath, and a number of other people who just gathered with us. So I think it'd be wonderful for you now to debate whatever it is I said about you, and
well, let me come in there, George, and say, I mean, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. And the thing I want to say first is it's an absolute privilege to be working with you over so many years, but also to be connected as a friend and with Kathy and Rachel in London. It's absolutely wonderful. And George didn't mention it, but he's lived in our basement from time to time over the past several years. And bringing him back into this house today, we've let him come to the third floor where we can look out into what I'm afraid is a very rainy London. But it's an absolute pleasure at all those levels: professional, personal, family,
and
very connecting, and basement. And I guess, you know, you very kindly said, you know, what I do in the world. I'm a leadership consultant, work with top teams, do individual coaching, work in organizations across all sectors. And the three things I wanted to say by way of introduction, responding to what you said there, George. One is, I'm in my early 60s. I'm a white man of exceptional privilege, and I've been a goody two-shoes for too long in my life. And the last few years, I've decided it's time to stir things up for all the sorts of reasons that we're now going to talk about there's some things to really shift and change. And I'm trying to be more courageous in my life, and I think I am. Second thing is, it's been a joy being the host of the Golden Civilization Conversation, which, George, I guess we started here on Primrose Hill last November. We have a community of 60 or 70 people. We've met 6 times. I'm going to say more about that as we go along, but right at the core of it is a sense of a whole range of people who just want to come together regularly to talk about what we want to change in the world through conversation and collaboration. And we've identified a whole range of things, both at the level of our individual behavior, our generosity and kindness, and what we do in the world. And it's helped us strengthen some of our resolve. But also we've identified a particular topic around the notion of wisdom as something to really focus on as a group. And we might come back to that. And the third thing I want to say by way of introduction is that, because I think it's so relevant to what we're doing around golden civilization, is that in working in organizations, our world is increasingly complex, increasingly demanding. And what I find with my colleagues is that we're ever more working on helping individual leaders thrive in complexity. because faced by so much uncertainty, so much entanglement, so many complex relationships, our temptation as human beings is to hunker down through stress and anxiety, whereas actually what we need to be looking for is possibilities and openings and how we can go for things. And so we've developed some frames to do with looking after our inner leadership, our inner resources in terms of how we manage our emotions and our relationships with people and how we think and our values. And unless we do that and look after our inner resources, we can't lead our people to possibilities. And for me, that's a really strong golden civilization theme about how we as human beings can stand up to these huge challenges we're facing, make better use of our inner resources to face these challenges. Let me pause there, George, see what you want to ask me about. But I wanted to say those three things. Firstly, that I'm no longer goody two-shoes. I'm absolutely loving hosting a golden civilization conversation. It feels so helpful to so many of the people involved in it, a sort of sense of comradeship. And thirdly, I think that what we're doing has real relevance to the leadership work I and many others are doing around, particularly about being a wise leader in our ever more complex world. So I don't know what that gets you thinking about, George, that you'd like to pick up on us to knock around.
So many things, but really so many things. I really want to get back to the wise leadership and also learn a little bit more about this extraordinary group that you've pulled together for Golden Civilization Conversations. But the thing that strikes me, I've heard you say this really from pretty near where we began as friends. And I remember you saying that you didn't want to live such a straight life in a way, that you wanted to be more courageous. And the term that I recall is edgy. Yes. That you wanted to have a bit of more edginess and have more courage around that. And I'm wondering how you are feeling that and how you feel that you're manifesting that, and why is it so important for you to make this shift in your life, and what will happen as a consequence?
Great question. What I have learned is that for all sorts of reasons, my default has been to go along with things, accept things as they are, because I found success in that growing up as an adolescent, as a young man, and through my 20s and 30s and 40s, of going along with things. And there was a strong sense of confidence in myself. But I noticed that there was too many things I wanted to influence. So in terms of developing more courage, it has been a level of all sorts of things. But above all, it's been about just saying what I think more often, just taking ownership of that. So I do that much more with clients, speaking truth to power. That was one of the themes we were talking about just now, actually, as we were thinking about this, speaking truth to power, but being more active in the world, both at the level of things I choose to engage in, but also representation of things. So I demonstrate more. I'm on the streets more. I joined Extinction Rebellion. I've demonstrated around your lovely president when he's here, European Union referendum, those sorts of things. So I've been much more active in that sense. But also in my life, what I was just saying to you, that I've just decided, and actually this I think was a direct consequence of the Golden Civilization conversation. I've decided to become a suicide counsellor, and I've just trained to do that. I feel that's a sort of, so does that answer the question enough, George? Does it go enough to, because I do think this is fundamental about wisdom, is that we are, as we were talking about earlier, is we work our inner really strongly to see, well, what choices do we have? What other choices do we have? Can we have more choices? Can we take more choices? I think I'm finding more choices for myself in those sorts of ways. Does that, what does that?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Of course, I didn't know you before this idea had come alive for you. And I know that you also played a lot of sport when you were a young man, and so there's a part of you that's competitive, but mostly I experience you as a thinker who isn't afraid to share what feels like it's right on, what's important to be said. This speaking truth to power. And so I wonder, as the other thing that I know about you is you're a fabulous listener. And I think of it as being, you and I've talked about listening as being, in many ways, a key to wisdom, and a key to self-knowing, and a key to engagement, to actually conversation. And so I'm wondering, you you leaped right forward when these golden civilization conversations came about. And you said, well, I'm going to do one. And then you led one, and people were so enthusiastic about it, and you were so enthusiastic about it, that together you now have crafted 6 of them. And with the notion that there is a sustainability and ongoing nature to that conversation. So I'm kind of wondering how that evolved and where that stands for you. What does it mean to you?
Well, can I come to that question second? And can I just offer, because as you said, I'm really passionate about conversation and dialogue. And I just think, I just want to say something about this, about how it fits in visions of golden civilization. You know, in organizations, simply, there are 3 types of conversation going on. One is very transactional, one, yes, no, let's do something. One is a debate. What are the pros and cons? Let's make something happen. The third one is open-ended dialogue. And the frame we've developed with others on this is that sort of dialogue about open-ended, strategic, searching issues, we have to have more and more of them as we look for possibilities, revolves around 3 spirits, we call them spirits. One is what you've said, listening and attention, that the quality of our attention helps others think. The other is the quality of inquiry, the quality of our questions, the quality of our incisive questions, which help people think about their assumptions. And the other is the quality of our advocacy. And I don't know about you, George, or others on the Facebook Live here. My experience is that as you look around organizations, there's high octane advocacy, the trading of opinions. But there's low octane and low skilled attention, listening, and inquiry. And if we could boost those 3 things together, and it's true in politics as well, isn't it? That if we looked at our current world here in the UK and Brexit and Leave and Remain, the division that's come up with it, it's been crying out for 3 or 4 years about open-ended, wonderful quality dialogue. So I just want to say that first to see it. And I'll come to gold in terms of what that stimulates for you.
That's extraordinary. I mean, when you think about it, if you think about political dialogue now, or you think about corporate dialogue, wouldn't it be amazing? I mean, talk about bringing wisdom into hierarchies of power. Wouldn't it be amazing if, in fact, the cultures were cultures of great listening, of great attention, and of great inquiry? And instead, what we find, and I think what annoys us and what causes us to rebel in some way, is that they are cultures of enormous advocacy with all the power of the world behind them, all the power of great money, all the power of institutionalized processes, so that power of advocacy becomes something that we rebel against for very good reason, because often they advocate for something without actually hearing what we have to say. And that's true in the political world, that's true in the corporate world. It's also true, can be very true in the nonprofit world, where again, they have something, they've got a mission, and that's what they're advocating. How marvelous to think about that, just the quality of attention, of listening, and of inquiry, and how much that
mix
builds.
High quality advocacy, high quality inquiry, high quality attention. You can do those 3 things, then the dialogues around these very difficult, open-ended questions, which we're all dealing with, and wise leaders have to deal with them, we get just better at dealing.
Yeah, fantastic. So I can see with your dedication to those 3 things, I can see why people would come back again and again.
Well, I'm not sure about that, but just 2 or 3 things, just at a factual level, around your question about golden civilization conversations, is that you were at our first one, weren't you? And it's essentially a community of 60 to 70 people. And I suppose between 18 or 25 have come to each of the sessions we've had, and we've had interaction before. And we've used your wonderful process, George, around really thinking about vision of a golden civilization, about what stands in the way and what actions we might want to take. And there are 3 or 4 things I want to say about the process, which I think have held it. One is that process. 2, the imperative for action, the sense that brings people into these conversations, the imperative for action, it's a now thing, whether we're dealing with climate change or money in politics, or whether we're dealing with what we want to do in our neighborhoods, it's a now thing, that sense of imperative for action. That where we've got to, and I think this is so true of some of the other groups you're working with, some of your other conversations, is, of course, a number of us are taking action politically or socially or in our organizations. People become more robust about that. But what we've been doing is also pay attention to our way of being. So our kindness, or our sense of connection, our sense of speaking straight, and I think the conversations really help people get clear on some of those things. And then two themes, might come back to wisdom in the end, have really stood out in this group. One is, how can we be attentive to not being in our own enclave, our own group of people who think the same? How can we've talked a lot about oneness, about connection with difference. And that's been a very strong theme for us, but also to say to ourselves, let's walk into dark areas, the shadow of life, darkness, and confront it, whether it's around racism or hatred or refusal to cooperate. And that's been a really strong theme for this group, about knowing, let's not fool ourselves, we're dealing with strong darkness, shadow, and it's both in ourselves and in our communities. So we have to, right from the word go, that sense, I don't know whether you remember it from our first conversation, about more of us have to step into what is really challenging. Anyway, those are some of the things. I don't know whether that sparks anything for George, but those are some of the things. And we've developed a really strong torch, which is around truth and justice. It's around delight. It's around harmony and connection. It's around vitality. It's not a goody two-shoes torch.
No.
It's a torch of activism, but also of delight.
Yes.
Which people might have seen on the little
on the Golden Civilization website and on the Facebook group page, you'll see it. We've put it, because it's so beautiful what Julian put together. He did put it together with the group, but I think he spearheaded the
based on all we generated around our vision.
All of the ideas. And it's so, I don't know whether we've got time to read it, but it's a lovely, maybe I will read it. It's really quite, would you read it? Yeah,
I'd love to hear you.
It's just
because I've read that so often.
Yeah. So Julian's talking about, he calls it the torch, and it's a term of art that we use in the evoke practice of life planning. And we are bringing that life planning practice, which life plans individuals, into their greatest dream of possibility for themselves. And it's a phenomenal thing that you create in a life plan for an individual. And the idea of the Golden Civilization Conversations is, it's time to do that for planet Earth. And it's time to do it for all of us across cultures from different countries. And to bring us together in our own locale, inside ourselves. One of the wonderful things I'm hearing as you're talking is how much people are shifting inside of themselves earnestly, sincerely, and how much they're enjoying that process. And
that's where the work has to be done.
Yeah, it's really quite something. And then the added incentive to go out and make a difference, where I suspect otherwise they either feel alone, or they feel, if they are compelled to go, they're compelled to go in more political circles. And there's something very accepting in the Golden Civilization group that you have, where some people are headed in one direction, and other people are headed in another direction. And they're just appreciated and supported. It's a wonderful thing. Well, let me read this, because it's very beautiful. If, as a consequence of our work together and in league with other like-minded groups across the world, we, the human race, were to live in liberty with truth, freedom of expression, and justice at the core of our existence. Place the health and longevity of planet Earth and all who live on it at the forefront of our attention. Delight ourselves and each other with our joy, humor, optimism, and sense of fun. Live in harmony and compassion, embracing difference in a spirit of empathy, kindness, tolerance, and love. Explore and deepen our wisdom, self-knowledge, and creativity through vibrant dialogue, learning, science, and art. And move forward every day with a deep sense of collective endeavor, courage, vigor, and vitality to improve the lives of all on the planet. How would that be? How would that be? Pretty special. And I read that now, Julian. I don't know if you know
Yeah,
this.
I do.
I read it at pretty much every
Yeah.
Golden Civilization conversation that I originate.
Mm.
And we've now got, I haven't originated all of them, but we've had over 100 now all over the world. And I've probably originated maybe 40 of them. So, but it's beautiful, beautiful. Frequently brings tears to my eyes.
Yeah,
As I
and a
listen.
couple of things about it as you read it there, as
Mm.
I think about the conversations we had about it, which led to it,
Mm.
was this a couple of senses that as we developed the vision, the voice came up, remember, this is also about vitality, entrepreneurial spirit, courage, moving forward, making something happen. And the second thing was that you've really re-evoked for me was embracing difference and finding a way that we're more connected to difference. Because in the end, we human beings have more in common than we have that's different. But in our more toxic world at the moment, difference is winning the day. So I want to say those two things in response to that.
Well, it's lovely. The embracing difference. One of the extraordinary things that we found in these conversations happening now all over the world is that embracing difference is a major theme everywhere. Yeah. That people want to live together in love and compassion and kindness and generosity of spirit, in collaboration, vitally with creativity, and really appreciate each other. So I love the phrase, how you have it in here, and how much attention you're paying to it in the group. Yeah.
And George, the notion of wisdom came out of it very strongly as well. And to the extent that, and this rather reflects the composition of the group, that we're having a go at as a collective enterprise, the notion of wisdom. And we've set ourselves the job this year, 2019, of developing a curriculum for wisdom from the age of 6 to 96. Some people in the 90s have been upset it only goes to 96. We haven't yet heard any 6-year-olds complain or 4-year-olds complain. It doesn't embrace that. But we're having a go at that 90-year span. Yeah. And we feel that's really important for a couple of reasons, because there's a deficit at the moment in organizations in the world around wisdom. There's some wonderful examples, but there's a deficit. We need it. And in this group, we have, from all sorts of perspectives, a group that can have a go at that. So we're having a go at that. And perhaps we'll do another Facebook Live when we've made a bit more progress.
Oh, I'd love to do that. And let's close on that piece. Just maybe one more thought. Wisdom has been something that obviously I've written about it. You've thought a lot about it, and written about it. One of the things that comes out of these conversations, these Golden Civilization conversations, after we craft this amazing vision that feels liberating to us, it feels hopeful, really. I mean, it's amazing. You gather these group of people together, many of whom didn't know each other coming in. And at the end, you have a vision like this one that we've just read from Julian's group. And you feel inspired. So there's a reason why you come back. But what we do after we create the vision is then we have 2 or 3 segments to the conversation afterwards. Sure. The first thing immediately afterwards is obstacles. What are the obstacles to making this happen? The second thing that we have is, as you know, well, okay, so there are the obstacles, but what actions could solve those obstacles? What might we do, either nationally, globally, or locally, or individually? And then we close always, which is this, I think for me, it's always the sweetest point of the meeting, with what personal commitments, what's changed as a consequence of this hour or 2-hour meeting, where people are willing to go, well, now I'm going to go out and I'm going to try and listen to at least one person a week who's really different from me. That's a totally different point of view. And really listen with compassion and kindness. So that might be an example, or it might be this manual of wisdom. So what has come out of Julian's group is this passion amongst, maybe it's a third of them, maybe it's a half of them. Everybody respects it and is eager to learn and hear and participate. But probably there's a core group that's really going to be mainly active on it and collaborating with it. And the rest of them have their own way of participating and making the Golden Civilization happen. So my question, my comment is, and then just to see your thought, is that the reason I think this has come up, it's come up in other groups as well. And the thought has been that why are we struggling in civilization? You know, we're so wealthy as a civilization. Obviously, there's tremendous inequality and tremendous problems. Why are there so many problems? And why aren't we just thriving? There is so much to celebrate in human nature and in the world. Why are we not just thriving? And one of the obstacles that we notice, it's called different things. It's called corruption. It's called politics. It's called corporate power. It's called different things. But one of the ways that we frame it is that there are hierarchies of power that don't listen very well, that don't have wisdom at the top, and that wisdom doesn't permeate. So a lot of the core group of your community has had a lot of experience in institutional life and in leadership, teaching leadership and teaching listening. Mm-hmm. So they know a lot about what's going on. What are your thoughts about wisdom in these hierarchies of power, these institutions, and how do you think your work might be able to impact?
Well, I want to give you a couple of comments on that, George. It's a wonderfully big question, but a couple of comments. But there's one observation on what you've just said. As I listened to you talk then about what's been happening, I realized how optimistic I was. Because if we think about where politics needs to go, where organizations need to go in our very complex world, they do need to go to thoughtfulness, self-awareness, collaboration, a sense of a growth mindset, calm, those sorts of things. Yeah. And we as a human race are going to find more opportunity to develop people so that they do those things more effectively. So that's why I feel optimistic about the next 30 years, because that's what, in our complex world, we can't thrive through a focus on winning, dominion, conquest, being on top of things, knowing all the answers. It's increasingly not possible to do that.
Yeah.
So I think the evolutionary step will be an optimistic one and take us to what we've just been talking about. We could stop there, but on your point about organizations and hierarchies of power and wisdom, I've just got two things to say. I don't think they're quite in response to what you and I have had a conversation, haven't we, over the last year or two about where power lies. And my sense is that organizations to thrive need distributed leadership. All of us are leaders. All of us need to access our wisdom. It's not just about one or two people, it's all of us. It goes back to the complexity. So that notions of building organizational capability have to be about building, accessing and harnessing the wisdom of everybody. And the second point I want to make, which perhaps goes back to your first question to me, is that this is increasingly happening. But unless organizations are intervening to help people work on their inner leadership, their inner resources, to help them have more choices day to day in the moment to respond to all that's going on, build their skill in that, build a way in which they stand in the present moment, then we're going to find it difficult. So those are the 2 points I wanted to make straight off the bat. It's about distributed wisdom, distributed leadership, and it's about paying attention, I think, to the inner above all. So I could say much more, but I just wanted to say those two things.
Well, I love
those things make sense.
Yes, I love closing on optimism, and as you know, I'm optimistic as well. And
look at you shining through your face.
Well, and at the same time, you gotta speak truth to power. You gotta get on.
Don't let me off that.
So this notion that we have to make the change. I think that's part of why we have Golden Civilization Conversations. That's why we introduced them, is we have no choice. It's that time, and that's a good thing. We have no choice because it's that time for that particular evolutionary step inside of each of us to be better and wiser people, and also to tackle the challenge of an institutional life where their objectives are not always coming from a place of, very, very seldom coming from a place of wisdom or from a place of kindness. So how do we bring the human virtues into that place? So first of all, how do we strengthen all of that in ourselves?
Yes.
I think you and I are very optimistic about that because of all kinds of trends happening in society. And then our challenge is in speaking truth to power to gently, kindly, and occasionally quite clearly and distinctly and emphatically saying, here's something that could really make a difference.
Good for you, George.
All right. Good. Great. Thank you, everybody. Wonderful to be here with Julian. I'm sure we'll have him back on and explore more and more deep questions about the nature of wisdom and how do we bring it into society? How do we make a golden civilization happen is really what we're all about. So thank you. Thank you very much for joining. We'll see you again next week. See you again soon.
Good for you, George. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.